Hey, you like cars? I get myself situated once again. We are back to the regular scheduled program. Now, before I begin, a couple things. One of them, my hands are like really dry, so I'm like, where's my lotion at? Because I'm not feeling that. But back to the regular scheduled program. Last episode was me talking about my SEMA show experience, how much fun that was, how great it was, but we are now back to the CarQuicks Podcast. You already know what time it is. CarQuicks, episode 72. Almost forgot the clapper part, but we're back. Talking about the automotive news, what's been going on, what I missed, which wasn't actually that much, to be perfectly frank. It wasn't that big of a deal, but there are some things happening. And currently right now, I think the LA Auto Show's going on. There's another auto show in San Antonio happening right now, which I didn't even know they had one. And I'm in Texas, but I only really go to the Houston one. Maybe one day I'll take the little road trip out to the San Antonio one to just see what it's like. I don't know. I never saw it and never been there, but I'm not opposed to a little quick 2-hour little road trip. Check it out and then turn around. But how are you guys doing? How's the family, the friends, the loved ones, the significant others, the children's? How are y'all doing out there? Thanks again for returning back to the pod because we got some things to talk about. So I'm driving right in. I'm glad to be back. It's Cameron Biggs, your host. CarQuicks Podcast. Now let's talk. What do we got? There was something interesting that came out that I just like the idea of it. It's a standard vehicle. It's nothing super exotic and crazy. It's just run of the mill. It's a commodity brand. So I'm talking about Hyundai. And they released the Ioniq 9 SUV, which you can see right here. Now, I personally think that this looks very much like a minivan. Like if they would have added sliding doors, maybe just increase the height of the body, brought it lower to the ground. I mean, we would have had a winner in my eyes, but I'm a minivan fan because I own a Toyota Sienna. I enjoy the sliding doors, but the majority and where people put their money is SUVs. So this is what we got. So anyways, and I'm looking at my notes right now because I'm telling you, I told you before, I'm getting better at this. And notes are needed, okay? Because I don't always want to just be off the top of the dome remembering the news that I read because I do well with retaining the information. But sometimes for the sake of the conversation being fluid, notes are needed. So what do we got? I want to just talk about the outside design of this, right? And I'm looking at it as we speak. I actually like how this looks, okay? So that is one of the things that I saw online when people saw this design. It was kind of a divided line. Some people said they hate how it looks. They don't like the exterior. I do like this very futuristic, kind of funky, pixelated design that Hyundai is doing on their electric cars. And what I mean by that is if you look at the front end, if you look at the headlights, you see this pixel art style when it comes to the headlights. And I think that's cool. I think that at least you're putting a difference in design compared to their cars, to Kia, which share the same chassis and a lot of the underpinnings of the car, compared to all the other electric SUVs that are out there from the slew of other manufacturers. So if you got to step away and be separated from those people, then you need some design differentiators so that you can see what they're looking at. And I think that they're onto something with this little pixel design. Now, here's my critique on the outside design. As you can see on the side profile, I think they went a little too hard in the paint, was trying to add elements of design. Like where you see those wheel arches, that little indentation, I thought it was like something that slid out like a bench or a table or something. But it's just part of the design. It's just a little element that's separated from the overall wheel arch. And I think that whole thing should have been clean. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe they got something in line later, like, hey, we got some attachments, though. I don't really see where those attachments make any sense on the wheel arches like that. But what do I know? They might have something up their sleeve. I just think that particular portion of this design takes away the overall cleanliness that you would see from the side profile. If that was gone, then this whole design looks very clean. Is it shocking? Is it like some brand new, oh my goodness, these people knocked this way out the park? No. We've seen a design like this before. This is standard fare for SUV. Long roof, kind of bubbly in design, and it looks like standard SUV. But I do appreciate the rear of this. Okay, so the rear, if you look at this picture here, you see the rear of it. I'm looking at it too. That pixel art that I was talking about, I'm saying pixel art, that's probably not what they're using as a design cue for what they're talking about, but it's a reference point for anybody not looking at the video. They can understand, okay, I see what you're talking about. The rear taillights, it's like a pixelated taillight across the entire length of the rear hatch. One big U, all the way down to the bottom. Even at the very bottom, there's like these rear taillights, fog light type things at the very bottom of the bumper. I like this design. I think that the rear does look good. I don't think it looks bad. I'm not saying it's the greatest angle from 3/4, but I think for large SUV and large electric SUV, for the sake of being drag coefficient and aerodynamic, because if you notice, there are no antennas on the outside of this car. They said they put the antennas in the windshield, the instrument cluster, and the rear hatch. I don't know how the instrument cluster, I guess there's an antenna on the top part where the screen is, and it obviously goes to the front windshield, and it can obviously control the in-car electronics and entertainment, GPS, things of that nature. But I like how this looks. It's clean, futuristic. I don't think it'll go bad as years go on. Some of the more polarizing designs, even like the EV9, the Kia version of this, because this is basically their answer to a large SUV. It is much larger than what they already have. So if you compare it to like the Palisades, the size difference on this one is that it is, I think it was like 9 inches, or let me find out what that information was, because there's a size difference that this has. It's 3 inches longer, 1 inch wider, and 2 inches taller than the Palisades, which is an already large SUV. So this is even bigger in size, and there's a reason for that. And they did something really cool when it comes to the interior. Well, here's why I like electric cars. This is for one of these reasons. When it comes to things like the interior, they tend to go a bit further when it comes to the idea of what the user, what the driver, what the family wants to have for features inside. I don't know if I'm wrong in this idea, right? But I just think that when they come to design these electric cars, I see a little bit more thought put into the interior design, interior features, than I see in some of the more known brand names. And I think some of that has to do with the lineage of where those cars come from. So if you have something like a Chevy Tahoe, they're not going to go as far as they normally would go, I believe, when it comes to interior reconfiguring, because of the lineage it has from the ownership they already have. They're not trying to alienate new buyers or people that have the previous generation of that car to the new one. They kind of want to keep them along as they add new things here and there. So if it comes to some thought out new design on the interior and exterior, electric cars is where a lot of this gets kind of put to the test to see if, like, hey, are we shooting for the stars here, or are we actually delivering something? And this is where, to me, they did good on the interior. So, see the picture. This two-tone color, I'm not a fan of this. This charcoal gray on the white, it doesn't really make this interior flattering. There's better color options that you can choose that they could have chosen for this initial car. I will say, when I'm looking at the different models, though, you want to pick a solid color on the outside. I think when you add like the little rugged look on the outside, when it comes to like the matte black plastic on the wheel arches, I think then the design becomes too busy. And I think that's what people are seeing when they see that model. And I'll show you a picture compared to like the calligraphy one that has like the 21-inch wheels. It looks a lot cleaner. The design has more cohesion. When it's the other way, I think it gets a little too busy, and then it's like, I don't know how this really looks. Interior wise, here's the feature they put in there. Front seats, heated, cooled, massaging. Rear second row seats has heated and ventilated options. There is a cooler refrigerator in the center console. The center console can slide back and forth. Like you can slide it up to move for like your elbow to have more comfort, slide up for the storage underneath. There's storage inside of it, there's storage in front of it, because obviously the floor is flat. We don't have any tunnels for transmission, so we can get away with having everything on the ground. It also has swiveling second row seats, which, if I'm to think of this idea, if you have a car seat in there, you got to get a baby out, child out, swivel the seat around, get the child out easier. Somebody got to get to the third row, swivel the seat around, jump to the third row. Swiveling seats makes sense. We got more. All the USB ports inside are 100-watt charging. Thank you. It's about time. Okay, the little 5-watt, 12-watt, it's not enough anymore. Okay, these tablets and phones got monster batteries. And it does this by pulling the power from the battery pack. Similar to, like on our Toyota Sienna, we have a 1500-watt inverter system that pulls from the battery pack, and we have a hybrid. And you can run, anything off that system. Coffee maker, rice cooker, popcorn, battery, refrigerators, like the coolers that are refrigerated, you can plug in, you can run it off that. I've taken it to the beach, plugged in things like a coffee maker. It does a ton of stuff. It's a great tool to have when you're out at the beach, camping, road trips. It can utilize to be powered for anything. So similar concept, we're utilizing the batteries. I don't know if this has any inverter system like that. I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a feature that they didn't really talk about. I would be highly surprised if they didn't include some real plug to take access to the battery if we're using the USB chargers at 100 watts. So we have that. There's also the sterilizing tray, which is it's kind of funny. In the front, there's a tray that has UV lights that you can sterilize small items, keys, phones, wallet. I don't know if this was a asked for thing. It sounds very much like a feature for like the Korean market. I'm not going to lie. The US market will take it. I just think that they'll have it for a bit, really not use it. But for other countries, I feel like that's something that maybe they've asked for, and that's the reason why it's there. So we have the ventilated seats. We have a power third row seat as well. We have sterilizing. The third row seat can recline with power in the back. You got cup holders everywhere. Obviously, on the dashboard is a digital display. It's 12 inches for the instrument cluster, 12 inches for the infotainment. Together, we got 2 feet of screen. And we have real buttons. Hey, that's another thing. They actually did not take away the buttons for the climate control because they clearly have heard the cries of every other manufacturer finding out, Volkswagen, I'm talking to you, that capacitive buttons is a terrible idea. So they didn't do that. However, there is a thing about the design of the interior. So for me, when it comes to electric cars, here's my other critique. The minimalist idea of the interior sometimes comes off as, like, to me, just lazy. I'm not saying all of them. There are a few that knock it out the park. Volkswagen with their Scout car SUVs, their interior design was A1. Rivian Motors, A1. You can do the electric car interior design. This one, it follows suit with what Hyundai has done on their other Ioniq cars. So just think big screen, tablet on dashboard. The other side of the dashboard has some Fox, it looks like stone, marble, wood, carbon fiber, probably depending on whatever trim you have there on the side. So it's not a bad design. The features on it make a lot of sense, and I can see a lot of families, especially when you're talking about wanting charging ports, needing cup holders, wanting things like massaging, ventilated, cool seats, all those things. Normally in the standard SUV world, like if I wanted cooled seats they do have that in the Sienna. We just don't have a Platinum. But some of these other features, you got to start getting into like Escalades and luxury SUVs to finally get to that. So the thing that Hyundai and Kia have done excellently is give you a massive amount of value and features for a lower price point. Though they still have to kind of, work their way through the ramifications of previous year, that they have bad cars. I mean, that was a long time ago. Honestly, if you're still resting on the idea that Hyundai makes a bad car or Kia, I don't know what to tell you. Now, if you're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s, yes, it's not the same ball game. They're in a different world right now. But let's get to the performance. Let's get to the powertrain. So there are 3 model ranges. We have long range rear wheel drive. We have long range all wheel drive. We have performance all wheel drive. Base models get a single motor. That's probably that long range rear wheel drive, 214 horsepower and like 358 foot-pounds of torque. Then you move up a notch, get to the mid range. We got 308 horsepower, 446 foot-pounds of torque. We jump to the top, 429 horsepower, 516 foot-pounds of torque. The battery size remains the same. It's 110 kilowatts an hour. I suspect that all of this is just computer design, computer programming to keep the power where it is, depending on the trim that you have. Range is 335 miles, which I did find interesting that the range remains the same all the way to the very top. I would almost guess that the lower 214 horsepower base model one would almost extend that range longer. And they haven't done any testing. I haven't done any testing. I still am working my way to get invited to do testing because I would put it to the test, see how far I could go. Because I think the lowest base one, or at least the mid one, may get above 335. Charging in ideal conditions. Optimal conditions probably means the battery isn't hot, it's cool, just sitting in a dark place, the wind chill is at 70 degrees, humidity is at 10%. And then if you're on a 350 kilowatt charger, it'll do 10% to 80% in 24 minutes. Real world, 45 minutes, an hour, or something like that, because those 350 kilowatt chargers are probably at the Hyundai dealership, like the premier one. And when you're out in the streets at, Charge America stations, you're, roll the dice, figure out what you got. It might be a 5-watt. Towing capacity is 5,000 pounds, which is good, it's decent. I don't know what happens if you're towing and the range you already know is going to be depleted. What is the range when it comes to electric SUVs? The one thing I wish that I would see more testing of is people taking their family. See, this is why I need to be invited, because I got the kids. So I can load up an electric SUV, put all them in there, and turn on the thing the way you would normally run a car if you're taking a road trip with the family, and see what is the true range. Okay? That's what I want to see more of. I want to see more of realistic range, not journalists just solo by themselves and saying like, oh, I got 400 miles. I'm like, well, I mean, cool. You just had the air vents pointed to you. I want to see what happens when you have tablets charging, radio music playing, different zones of the AC and the heat, and I got massaging on, somebody got heated seats on, somebody else has something else on. I want to see the different ranges of the features being ran to see what the true range could be, because that all has a factor in what it's doing. Maybe it doesn't have that much of a factor, but I think it does, and I think it's enough that there should be a separation into those type of tests. Like I said, invite your boy. Now, pricing hasn't been announced. I'm going to speculate here. If the EV9 is, I don't know, if you look at the Kia EV9 and it's somewhere around like 56, 60,000, 70, if you're getting to the calligraphy model here, 75, 80, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, maybe, let's just say 70, because it is, Hyundai isn't trying to price out their consumer base. They want to offer value for that. So I'm thinking it may max out at like close to 70, maybe even like 65, right? You might get like to starting at 55, 54. And then when you add the certain options, it gets like the base on the calligraphy being like 62, 63. I don't know. It could be a very good deal. The only thing that you have to get past is being an electric SUV. If you have the means to set it up so you have a charging station at your house, if you live in an area where the charging network is reliable, there's nothing wrong with this. Because the reality is, if you do take big road trips, then for some people, depending on where they go, there are those that like traveling to all the national parks. Sometimes electric SUVs is not really a viable option because you don't know where you're going to be in the middle of the night traveling through the country. But overall, I do like how this looks. I like the futuristic design. I like the idea of it. Listen, we're getting close. I said it before. When we bought our Sienna, I said, listen, if Toyota would have made an all-electric Sienna with like 400 mile range, I for sure would have been like, we need to consider that. Now, even though we take our road trips pretty far, like we travel out of the country to Mexico, so that's a little bit different when it comes to trying to figure out how to charge something there. But continuing on with some Hyundai news, they did introduce a new Elantra N. I love the Elantra N. Another car I need to drive. I haven't driven. I've seen them. I've been inside of them. I haven't had too much time behind the wheel to really get my feet wet, but I like what I have felt. I like what I see. They introduced another edition called the Elantra N TCR edition. This is track-oriented, upgraded wheels, lightweight wheels, bigger brakes. Looks like 6-piston ones from the picture I saw. Probably stickier tires like Summer Sport, Michelin Pilot Sport, 4S's like I got on my GR Corolla, and a large swan neck carbon fiber wing. I don't know if they changed the seats. The motor stays the same. The power stays the same. It makes very good power as it is. But now the track and focus of it is for more of the track. So I'm excited to see what this does against, like, say, Morizo Edition GR Corolla, Civic Type R, maybe even a regular GR Corolla, because, I mean, it can still perform and is more aimed probably at the Elantra N than I would say the Morizo. And just it's exciting to see manufacturers building out these more special sport compact cars, the ones that we are clamoring for from the 90s, that they were all in it to win it, making things like Evos and STIs and 3000 GTs and 300 ZXs. I mean, they were all in it for real. So it is good to see companies still saying this is a huge market, and the Elantra N market is massive. Like, I've been following people on YouTube that have awesome channels building out Elantra N's because they're going crazy. I am actually, some of it I'm jealous of, because I feel like the Elantra N community is getting parts thrown at them left and right. And not that the GR Corolla is not getting that, because it is. I'm just saying our entry point is a little bit higher because of the shenanigans that Toyota dealerships are playing when that car came out, and still are playing. So it's harder to develop for a car when the general public is fighting to get it at a decent price without markups and all this. And here you got Elantra N's performing at the same level, if not above in certain areas, and you can just walk in there and get it without fighting tooth and nail. So I get it, but a new one's coming. I'm sure I will hear about this and see it on the channels of those YouTubers. I'm sure plenty of people who want an Elantra N are probably holding on to be like, give me the special edition one, because I sure would. I would do the exact same thing. And I like how it looks. I mean, yes, it has boy racer, street racer type of look, but I mean, hey, I can't be mad. I like it. I'm going to shoot to something else I read about. A long time ago, I talked about probably like episode 40, episode 50. We're at episode 72 now, so we're on our journey. General Motors was talking about removing the ability to have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in their cars, which, as you can imagine, immediately was met with backlash of just people saying this is dumb. I even said, I was like, that's a dumb idea. Okay, you could put that in the other box. Okay, let's jump into the other box with good ideas. But very recently, they've been doubling down on it. I thought this idea kind of got tossed out. I'll be perfectly frank. I didn't think that they were really gonna just really do this. So if you don't know, let me explain. When you buy a car now, almost every single person probably asks about a very small feature. And if they don't ask, they suspect it's already there, like AC. That is, you plug your phone in, or you jump in the car and it has wireless CarPlay or wireless Android Auto, or it's wired. You have a way to plug your phone in. You basically see your interface on the infotainment system, your contacts, your maps, your driving. You can use Siri, you can use Android Auto, you can use all these features. You suspect it to be there, like you suspect to see AC and heat. But General Motors is doubling down on the idea of producing their own software, infotainment hardware and system into their cars. So they're, I guess it's one of their VPs, directors, person that's in charge of the head of software and services. His name is Boris Citinoque. His last name is spelled Cetionok. But there's an important reason why they're doing this. He came from Apple. So he was talking to The Verge and he was saying, I come from vertical integration. If you don't know what vertical integration is, and I get super technical, it's part of my normal day job working in IT. Vertical integration is something we throw around. It means all the time. Vertical integration. Anyways, what this means is they're making the hardware, the software, and everything in between all in one building, basically. Vertical integration. So if you notice, Apple's making these M chips, and they're making the hardware, and they're making the software, and soon enough, I'm sure they're gonna try to figure out how to make the screens instead of buying them from Samsung. And all these things are all so that everything is in-house. I'm making everything. So they want to make this thing called Ultify, which, oh my God, like the name is trash. Ultify sounds like those Amazon products you see when you're looking at like different devices and Wi-Fi routers, and it's like, oh, get the Ultify 2000 or something. It's just not a good name. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that names are always that good out the gate. A lot of the names that we like now is because we're just used to the name. I'm sure when Google was first thrown out there in that think tank, they looked at everybody and said, "Did you just say Google?" And now it's synonymous with search engine. But here's what he is basically trying to say. They want to be in control of the hardware, the software, and the services, combining all that with vehicle features like Super Cruise into a system that they control. Here's where I'm like, this is such a bad idea. This could fail horribly. Case in point, General Motors' track record of just software they haven't had enough time in the game, skin in the game, for me to believe that I would leave my infotainment services to the vehicle. Let's just make it even simpler. Let's talk about the idea of how is this going to be maintained and sustained. Okay. General Motors would have to charge a subscription fee for this. So let's get this straight. You got your Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile cell phone bill. You already bought $1,000 phone because it ain't like these things is cheap. And then you jump into your new Equinox, Trailblazer, Tahoe, Silverado, and they tell you, hey, in order for you to utilize navigation and voice searching and maps and vehicle services, we need you to subscribe to Ultify 365 for $10 a month or $100 a year. Now, in the grand scheme of $10 a month, we all waste $10 a month on miscellaneous things that do us no favor or show us no value. But if you are introducing that on the front end to something that people already know in the back of their head, we are under the pressure of subscriptions everywhere. Peacock, Netflix, Apple, Microsoft, HBO Max, Netflix. Like, we got subscriptions. I mean, you walk into the grocery store, there might be a subscription on milk soon enough at the games they're playing. They got subscriptions for cars. So we have seen enough subscriptions. Some people just want to say, give me the car and let it work. So if you're saying that if my service I deactivated I changed credit cards, I forgot to update the subscription on this model, I jump in the car and it's like, hey, guess what? You don't know where you're going because you didn't pay the monthly fee. So I'm off. Okay. Figure it out. You know what's going to start happening? We're going to get back to people buying phone mounts for their windshield to just mount their phone, because if I'm already paying for the service on Apple or Android, I'm just going to stick my phone on the windshield and get to it, because they're not going to not have anything running on the infotainment system. They will still have controls for like HVAC, for the air conditioning, for the seats, for the radio. So I could see a good amount of people just saying, I'm opting out. I don't care. I'm putting my phone right back on the dashboard. Or you're going to see companies figuring out ways to piggyback off that screen with some wireless CarPlay attachment that you plug into the USB port or USB-C port, and it will mirror the phone to the screen. Trust me, they're going to figure that out. So my thing about all these services that they're trying to add is for what? What problem are we trying to solve? Because that's one thing I always hear. Like, I hear from my VP I work with. What problem are we trying to solve? If I'm having a meeting with somebody and they're trying to talk about all these issues, I'm like, okay, what problem are we trying to solve? Okay. Is there a problem with people plugging their phone in and getting CarPlay or Android Auto? Is there a problem with wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto? Is not 99% of all the cars coming out have it in there because they know the convenience of it? Why are we blazing a trail of trying to create brand new vertical integrated software when it took companies like Apple and Google and Microsoft decades to get it correct? And they still fight through those issues. What about your servers? Who's running the back end? Who's running the security? This can be horrific. GM, I don't know why they're doing this. All I know is that it's not going to help you sell cars. Because the point of what you're doing is you're trying to sell cars. So anything that puts pressure or puts people to doubt whether they want to buy that car, to me, is counterintuitive. Like, if I'm at the board of members, I'm sitting there saying, why are we doing anything that would stop somebody from buying our car? And as stupid as it may sound to some people, like, y'all really not going to buy a car because it doesn't have wireless Android and, wireless CarPlay. Like, that's crazy. Who does that? Hey, when you're spending 40, 50, $60,000, the most minute detail to most people is huge to a lot. Meaning, I want the convenience of getting in the car and going. I got kids to pick up, errands to run, jobs to go to, things to do. I don't want to have another thing I got to pay for to get basic functionality. We'll see what they do. I know that this story isn't done yet. We're going to hear more and more about this because I really thought I did not think they were going to hold this down. I'm shocked, truly. Now, speaking about other car brands, Volkswagen has been talking about bringing a certain brand to the U.S., and I'm not talking about their Scout electric SUVs and trucks. They're talking about bringing Cupra to the U.S. Now, initially, I was excited, but some of my excitement when I thought about the reality of what's probably going to happen kind of came down. I came off my little high horse, my hill. I'm excited because I'm thinking about the Seat Leon Cupra R. I'm thinking about a hot hatch. That was awesome. I've seen one in Mexico. I was like, these are fire. Now, here's the reality. If they do bring Cupra to the U.S., I'm sure they're just going to bring the SUVs. The little sporty ones, the high-performance ones. And then I got to ask, do we have room in our market for yet another SUV? And if you're bringing Cupra, that means you got to make a dealership network, which means you're probably going to stick it in probably like major metropolitans, LA, New York, Miami, Houston, probably Dallas, and then hope that people are enticed enough to buy into it. And then you got to franchise it or get people to buy into your dealership network. But there's nothing exciting. Listen, they could very well get a big push if they bring something fun. Bring a new Seat Leon Cupra R, bring a hot hatch, bring a hot, performance sedan alongside the SUV. I don't know when this is going to happen, but the talks are that it is going to happen at some point. But given with all the changes and all the things that all these car manufacturers and these big conglomerates are going through when it comes to getting rid of brands, laying off people, laying off factory workers, closing factories, I do find it interesting that they would want to bring over somebody like Cupra, which if you're not a car enthusiast like me or a car person who lived in another country to actually know who they are, then that brand, when you see it, they're going to have a hard time selling that. People are going to say, who is that? And where did they come from? We'll see what happens. I didn't realize that they had enough bandwidth to say we're going to bring in another car company into the U.S. market while we're busy fighting to make sales on our basic Volkswagen cars. Now, going back to some electric SUV, Kia, somewhere, somehow, somebody asked the question of, can I get a high-performance electric 3-row SUV? And Kia obliged. They made the EV9 GT, which is a 501 horsepower's 0 to 60 in 4.3 second 3-row SUV. That's wild. Okay, this big block is moving almost probably faster than my car. I got to shift. They got to smash the gas and hold on. They got sport driving modes. Okay, I don't even realize that was a thing, but because those Target parking lots are no joke, you're going to need that sport mode, okay? You got to back out with authority. Get in and out quickly. Let people know what time you on, okay? I went to the self-checkout for a reason. I'm about business. Sport mode out of Target. Now, there's a green GT button that introduces the sportiest of settings. The most robust in handling, the most torque, the most speed. Now, where am I using the GT button? I don't know. Maybe you're going to the Tesla charging line, and if you've ever gone to one and you see all the cars pulling up and everybody looking at each other seeing who's going to get there first, right there. Catch them sleeping at the wheel, hit the GT button, and get to the charging station first. Okay, that's why we have it. You got to let people know you're gangster, okay? That way they understand you're not playing around. They'll also notice that it has lime green exterior accents. It got bigger brakes on the front. Interior has like suede inserts, bucket-like design, lime green. It has simulated paddle shifts, like when you're driving and you hit the gas, it feels like a shifting gears, and an in-cabin engine noise sounds that it produces. I didn't know that there was a market for this, but I'm not mad at it because let's just say it was me and I was like, I got to buy an SUV for the family. I want it to be electric. Listen, I have a Sienna XSE, which is a sporty looking minivan. So this is me. I mean, I'm making a joke about it, but I am them. Okay, I am this person. Hey, you got to get an EV9, and I look over my shoulder and say, "Oh, it's a GT one." Yeah, just give me that, because why not? Okay, I don't know the price on this. Given what the EV9 normally costs, probably tack on another $10,000, and they will sell what they sell with those. They also updated the 2026 Kia Sportage and the EV6 GT. The Kia Sportage, updated front ends, lights, and more of a kind of cleaned up the design. The EV6 GT got some of the funkiest headlights I've ever seen. Like, these things are like water droplets or something. I don't know. You can see in the picture here. You just know that if you get in a front end collision, these headlights, man, you're out of here. But those look interesting. I don't know if I'd necessarily like them, but it's not terrible. It's not a bad look. However, let's get into something. Let me tell you about somebody that did something without any foresight, any thought. And if there was thought, it was the wrong group that was thinking. Okay, we need a new set of brains to come in that room and say, hey, whatever y'all been thinking up for the past couple months, years, axe it, because you've lost it. That's Jaguar. So Jaguar has been in the news. Nobody has been talking about Jaguar this much since the F-Type or the XJ220. It really hasn't been a thing. But recently, as of this week, Jaguar announced their rebrand. I didn't even know that there needed to be a rebrand, but they brought it out, and they brought out this new logo. This logo, I can't say it's terrible because it's nothing. It's lowercase Jaguar, but they rolled it out as if they had found a second Mona Lisa. Like, they rolled it out with this commercial, and I'll just show it like on the screen. This commercial was like, dare to be different. So you got people dressed in different fashion, colors, squares, triangles, trapezoids. They're all their own people. And they're like, be different. Dare to be different. We are different. Do you like differentiators? We are them. Do you like a difference? We're that difference. Do you want to not be the same? We are not the same. All of this to make Jaguar to have you think we're about to do something brand new, unlike anything else. And so as you're watching this commercial, you would suspect that you should see a product at the end. No, the credits closed under the guise of a new generation, a new path forward is coming. If you saw this commercial and I did not tell you that Jaguar was a car company, you would swear that a perfume was coming out, okay, called Jaguar. You would be ready to see an underwear ad, lingerie, medicine, makeup, anything. You would have been expecting anything but a car. Now, I'm probably going to talk about more of this in my other little spin-off thing when I'm talking, later tonight called Exhausted, because I kind of want to dive in deeper and just have more fun with the jokes, because this is hilarious. Jaguar's issue wasn't the name or us wanting them to be more different. Nobody was like, man, Jaguar, I would really buy your cars if I felt you were different. Just make a good car. That's all you got to do. Remember, I was talking about what problem you're trying to solve? Jaguar is trying to solve the problem of selling cars. Make better cars. It's really that simple. I don't understand how we got into the idea that fashion and fashion models and lowercase letters and powerful, statements and bright colors was to lead you to the idea of that you can make better cars, because they actually do have a car that they've been teasing. It's this thing, which we don't even know what it looks like. It looks like Cruella de Vil is designing it, because the front end is a block. It looks like the front end came from Chrysler, and we don't even know what it is. It's called the I-Type, which, again, the thinking group had E-Type right there in their grasp. And I know E-Type is synonymous with beautiful design. So I'm sure if they would have called this E-Type electric, type, that's why I'm thinking it, they would have been blasted even further, because folks would have been like, you did what? Now, here's my thing. If you're going to make electric cars and that's your MO, then I think you should have made an electric E-Type, then followed up with, brought back the term X-Type, I-Type. And I'm looking at this camouflage thing. This doesn't even look like we going in the right direction, especially if I look at the commercial and I'm like, so that's the commercial and this is what is under the camouflage. We already on the wrong path. I don't know what y'all were doing all these months. To think that people were paid big dollars, big bucks, real salaries to come up with this. Like they sat around, when they do these big launches, they sat around over a big party, broke out some champagne, cut a ribbon, talked about the future. Mind you, the factories aren't even making cars right now. Like the people in the factory are sitting around saying, what job do we got? What's going on? Ain't no cars going anywhere. But we got a new beginning. I'm gonna talk about this more. This is hilarious. But speaking about leaning onto electric cars, what's funny about that whole statement is that so many manufacturers are backpedaling. I mean, heavy on the back pedal, okay? The full on, I'm a jerk dance, okay? Back pedal. These people aren't doing EV only. Porsche has said it, Mercedes has said it, and now we got Lotus. Lotus said, hey, we're now going to introduce plug-in hybrids. You know why? Because doing all electric is not smart when you're talking about trying to bring along your entire base of consumer and customers. You're not alienating them saying, hey, if you like our gas-powered offerings from Lotus, like the Elise and the Emira and the Evora, we're not doing that no more. Guess what? You got to figure that out. We're going to do electric ones. Now those buyers are either going to stay with that car they have or go on and find something else. So now Lotus is back saying, hey, we're going to also do plug-in hybrids. Surprise, surprise. Yet another company realizing that if you jumped off the cliff of saying only electric cars, that it wasn't going to be a viable thing for the future. I don't know why. This is not news, okay? This is actually fairly regular understanding if you're in those. I would hope if you're in these positions of running these companies that you can look down and say, hey, why does Chick-fil-A have a line out the door at every single location? Because they deliver what the customer wants. They don't change it. If Chick-fil-A comes out and says, hey guys, guess what? We're only going to be doing Beyond chicken strips. They're dead. Okay. Like their whole entire stock has fallen off a cliff. Okay. So Lotus is now saying that they're not doing full electric cars, which, like I said, not surprising. I'm going to go on my exhaustive thing and talk more about the Jaguar thing because there's a longer story there because it's just time and time again, some of the most storied brands just squander everything. And it didn't have to be that way. Like you have such world-renowned cars and things that people love, and then you just toss it out the window under the idea of like, we can think of something better when all you got to do is look in your history books. Like just open the encyclopedia and say, yo, what did we used to do? Oh, snap. That's when they loved us. How about we go back to that? I don't know. Now, my favorite segment of the podcast, GR Corolla updates. I know it's been a while. I haven't said much on things going on, but things are shaking. Okay. Oh boy, are they. Now, I do have something to put on the car. I gotta, this daylight savings thing is really killing my YouTube video schedule because normally I would have a whole lot of daylight. Well, it's not daylight savings, just winter time. It gets darker sooner. It had nothing to do with the time difference because I lived in Hawaii and they didn't have any daylight savings because it's a waste of time. Now, no pun intended, but now it gets darker sooner. So I can't get away with, finishing work and then going out there like 3, 4 o'clock, 5 and just being like, all right, cool. Let's throw on a part. I got until 7:38 for daylight and I got more than enough time. So I now got to figure this out on the weekend and probably stack a lot of things, but I have a camera to install, which I don't really have. If I had it next to me on the show it on the screen, but when I was at the SEMA show, I was literally waiting for my wife to come out the bathroom and I was standing next to Wolfbox, who makes a lot of dash cams, and I was looking at what they're doing. And I was like, oh, snap, I kind of like their stuff. I mean, they were there amongst a bunch of other. I was looking at them. There's Red Tiger. There's, I don't know how you say that company, Viofo, Viofo. There's a bunch of them. Anyways, they want to partner with me. They sent me their best camera they have. They basically replaced the entire rear view mirror on the car. I'm going to put that on the car because I've been waiting to get a dash cam in the GR Corolla because I've been riding reckless because these streets with no dash cam, you asking for foolery to happen and you need a recording of it. So I'm going to put that on. I also have the brake upgrade from BCB to put on my car, which is about the boots and the piston things. And I'll talk about that later. I haven't done that because I kind of want to knock out multiple brake changes at the same time. Stainless steel lines are cheap. I can do it myself. I just have to find like either like a bleeder that I can do myself, or bring my wife back into the fold and say, hey, pump the brakes a bunch of times. But I want to do stainless steel brake lines. I want to do a brake cylinder, master cylinder, inside the engine brace. And I want to change the color of the calipers. And that is where a lot of the holdup is right now. So I have an idea for what I want these brake calipers to look like. And there's a company and there's some places in Houston I need to call to ask, can you plate, color, anodize, whatever it may be, on these calipers to the color I want? And if they can, I would rather just take them completely off, send them off to get finished, get them back, rebuild the parts in there, and then put it back on the car, change out the rotors when I'm there, change out the brake pads. So it's a little bit of a longer kind of ordeal because of the cost involved. If I want to change out rotors in the front to different two-piece like gyro disc. So there's a difference there, just all for the sake of me having fun modifying the car and for better brake performance when I'm on the back roads, and eventually when we get to the track and stuff. It's not, I've always said that ain't my MO. So I'm not even pushing for it because it never was something I was like, oh, I really, really got to do this. I like just driving out on the road. I wish I lived near a bunch of mountains because that's all I'd be doing. Now, that's coming. Then I have another part coming from a company that can't speak about it right now. We got another performance part coming. If this goes through and we agree to what we're agreeing to, this is a major deal. This also proves the fact that I'm doing what I said I was going to do, and I'm my integrity, my honesty in what I'm producing and completing when it comes to these partnerships is resonating with these companies. So that's cool. I've even reached out to a few others that are like, we got partial sponsorships we want to do with you. I've talked to companies on Instagram where I've just shot it in the dark, said, hey, I don't know if you ever want to work with content creators, but I'm an advocate of the platform and I really want to be a voice for the community for GR Corollas. And they're like, we like what we see from you. I've said it and I'll say it again. You never know who's watching and you never know who is listening to what you're doing. So it's all going well. Still more work to do, things I got to save up for. None of this stuff is cheap. It takes time, effort, and focus. And that's what I'm going to do. We're going to make it there. I don't know if any other shows coming up. Like I said in the beginning of the podcast, we got the Houston Auto Show that comes up later. The San Antonio one is happening like this weekend. Like I said, I believe. Didn't even know that was happening, but that's going on. And we're just going to enjoy the car and we have a good time. My idea for the exterior stuff when it comes to the front lip and the splitter and all that is something that I'm looking at right now because of all these companies that I kind of want stuff from and doing Black Friday deals. So it's kind of a good time to do that. But here's one crazy thing I'm going to throw out there. When I was at the SEMA show, if anybody watched my videos, my recaps of the day, one of those days, like day 3 or 4, I was talking about the idea of like me and my wife wrapping my car, right? Because she just likes the idea of it. And when we were there, she was sitting there looking at all the demos, asking questions. I'm like, cool. If you love it, we can do it together. Let's just figure this out possibly. I look at it as like it's not an impossible thing. I've done harder things, right? Wrapping a car is not as hard as dropping a transmission, okay? All I'm looking at is patience and time. Even though there are techniques and things to do, but it's really just putting a film over a body. It's not nearly as hard as putting in a downpipe because obviously for me it's easy. I'm not saying it's not a hard thing to do, but anything you do mechanically on a car has bigger ramifications if you do it wrong than if you do a wrap wrong. However, right now, Inoza Tech is having a wild deal on wraps. A wild deal. Whole rolls are like $400. And I'm like, I might have to jump off this bridge and just cop a roll and like get to it. I don't know yet. I only got until like December 2nd before the sale's over to make that decision. But I'm going to talk to the wife tonight and say like, listen, you really want to do this with me? Because I got some ideas that we can record with this. And the only thing is if I wrap it, that kind of introduces, I really can't wait to save up and get some wheels. If I can somehow figure out a sponsorship on some wheels, I mean like, yo, holler at me. But I may do this. I don't know yet. if I do, it's going to be awesome content. I have a circuit edition hood I need to put on the car. So either I'm going to buy a full wrap and do this car in a completely different color, or I'm just going to wrap the circuit hood I have in standard Toyota white and call it a day. I might do both. I might still wrap the hood and still buy the roll. I don't know, because that's going to take longer time. We got to move panels off. I'm probably going to have to clear out more of the garage and stick the car in there and give us room to work around it. But I have kind of a cool idea of us just kind of time-lapsing, learning, and doing this together, because we've never done it, but it ain't impossible. That's all I got for y'all. Okay, I'll be back next week. I'll be back, with another exhausted episode. If you haven't caught that, if you haven't seen or you haven't heard, I do another video kind of, I don't want to say podcast, just me talking to the camera late at night. Nothing special. It's just me talking about a topic that I get asked certain questions about talking more on. And I don't necessarily want to put it into the podcast. I love my format here, but there are certain things I want to keep talking about, like this Jaguar thing I'm putting on exhausted one, because there's way more jokes there that I can just, reel off and just talk about and just speak about rebranding companies and ideas and products. So exhausted, I'm going to throw it up here. If you haven't seen it, was episode 1. I was talking about Marquez Brownlee and everybody on his head about him speeding down that, residential street. And that's what I'm talking about. Subject matters like that are kind of like social media topics that I'll talk about on there. And I like it. It gives me something to do late at night. If I'm just relaxed, my wife might go to sleep with, earlier or sooner than me, and I'm still up, and I'm like, you know what? Let me talk to the camera real quick. Okay. And that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to see y'all around. Like I always say, do as you wish, do as you may. It's Cameron Biggs, your host. This was another episode of the CarQuicks Podcast. Thanks for joining. I'll see y'all around. Peace.